All right, let's get this Grot Airship painted up. And you may notice I primed it all white. That's because I want to use a lot of contrast paints, and I think contrast paints look way better over a white base. You can see that like some of the milk jug lids didn't get fully covered by the white primer, and some of the wood is still peeking through, but you know what? That's totally okay. That's totally okay. I don't mind that. So for the ropes, we're going to do Skeleton Horde, which is just one of my favorite light browns in the world. It's made for skeletons, but honestly, I never use it for skeletons. I use it for anything that needs to be a light brown, and there's a lot of good texture on it. Always looks good, always effortless, always good results. Now for the wood parts, and there's a lot of wood on this, we're going to go for snake bite leather. Snake bite leather is an amazing brown contrast paint that just gives you all of this beautiful, wonderful depth of color, and it goes on smooth. You can intentionally make certain parts a little thicker or a little thinner, and it gives you all of this grain and everything, and it's just an amazing color. And especially if you're putting it on actual wood, it really, really does a great job. Now, I know what some of you are saying. You're saying, Aaron, this is already wood. This is real wood. Why are you painting it to look like wood? And there's a very good reason for that. Because I dare you to spray all of the things that aren't wood, but still spray the parts that, but not get anything on the parts that are. I mean, I suppose you could spend hours and hours putting blue tape over the wood to maintain it. I mean, you could, but the reality is it's just so much quicker to just spray it all and then just paint the wood color rather than try to cover it all up and then and then just retain it. And if you were to make a single mistake, like one itty bitty error, and it would be all for naught. So that's why I don't do that. Now, for anyone who's new to contrast paints, there's something that they don't tell you, but you really need to get used to, because your instinct if you've come from normal paints is you're going to be like, use just a little. So you're going to be like, just a little bit like this, a little teeny bit like that. And you got to have to crush that. What you want to do is glob it on like this. And that's going to feel so wrong. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm putting on 3 times as much paint as I should. But there's a reason for it, because all of the contrast ability that the paint has won't come out if there's not enough liquid for it to pool in the recesses and drain away from the top. So if you're not putting enough paint on, you'll lose the contrast effect. And so you gotta, when you first start, you're gonna be like, oh, that's way too much paint. The other thing is, if you're using something really porous, like, usually you're painting on plastic. I'm painting on actual wood. Because it's porous, it will actually suck up a lot of the paint. And so you have to actually put on more than you normally would have to. So that's the downside of using real wood. However, the upside to using real wood is, because it has all the natural grain and everything already in it, the contrast paint makes it look absolutely gorgeous. And one of the things that's always in the back of my mind whenever I'm choosing what to paint these vehicles is, what clan did it come from, right? And so this is an airship. It has a lot of wood on it. So to me, that screams snakebite. I could easily see the snakebites being like all these newfangled anti-grav nonsense. Back in my day, we flew the way Gork intended, with a tarp and hot fire, and we did just fine. So I'm gonna do the armor green because we've got all the wood that just naturally comes with it. So we're gonna do the armor green. And so then what do I do with the squig hide? And so I've picked red as a good contrasting color, partially because It just, whenever you have green, red looks really good alongside it. But also because, you know, red is the color most people are going to expect on your vehicles, even though not all Orc vehicles are painted red, but you know, you'll get a lot of comments like, why isn't it red? And so by doing the squig leather here red, it's like, why isn't it red? It is red. See that part right there. Now that we got some paint on the flames, you can really see a lot better the detail that we got out of the hot glue. And I think once it dries, we get a wash on it, we do some highlighting, a little blending. I think this is gonna look really, really good. Now for the metal parts, the metallic speed paints from Army Painter are some of the most amazing things out there. If you haven't tried them, you really, really owe it to yourself. They're super thin, they go on super well and super easy. And look at this, look at this. Look just how beautiful this goes on. And it gives so it's a contrast paint, but it's also metallic. And I'll tell you right now, talking and painting and pointing the camera and making sure that the camera's pointed in the right place all the time, all at the same time, whoo! That's a lot. But as we get here into the light here, you'll be able to see a little better. But these Army Painter speed paints, these metallics, if you haven't tried them yet, you really, really owe it to yourself, because they are absolutely game changers. And they go on so fast and so smooth. And they have this kind of capillary effect to them. Like you'll put the paint on and the paint will just kind of naturally flow into other places. Like you can almost like dab it here and just watch it kind of travel its way over to other places. So it gets down into little nooks and crannies really easy. And so what you don't end up having to do, you don't end up having to do a lot of precision work. You can really just kind of slap it on and then just let the paint itself get in there and get all those little cracks and crevices. And so it's not, they're not kidding around when they call it a speed paint. It is absolutely wonderful. And you can see just how fast that was. And now that it's starting to soak in and everything, you can see just all the depth of shades and colors that we're getting in there. I cannot recommend these speed paint metallics enough. They are just so wonderful, but you have to put them over white. You cannot put them over black. They won't work if you put them over a black primer base. So another reason why I prime white most of the time. Another thing you want to keep in mind is that contrast paints and speed paints will absolutely destroy your brushes, because they have so much capillary action going on that it's impossible for the paint to not travel up the bristles and get into the root. And this part here of the brush where the metal tang holds it into place, that's getting paint there is probably the #1 reason why brushes wear out. And so if you have like a nice brush, like a nice detail brush that you want to remain nice, don't ever allow paint to get up in there, because the more it does, the more it's going to ruin it. The bristles will start spreading. You'll get that bristle bloom, and then it just kind of ends the life of the brush. Now, contrast paints, it's impossible to keep that from happening because there's just so much capillary action going on. So don't use your nice brushes to put on the speed paints. Don't use the nice brushes to put on the contrast paints. What you want is the nastiest, rattiest brushes you have, or at least the ones you care about the least. I have a lot of family members who don't know anything about painting, and so they don't know a high quality brush from a low quality brush. And let's be honest, neither do I. But so I get a lot of brushes, and so what I do is I kind of Like this, I have this like little bent one here right now. It came bent. I didn't like rage on it or anything, but it's not a brush that I want to use for my regular detail work. And so it makes a wonderful contrast paint applicator. So that's something you want to keep in mind. You've got your detail brushes, you've got your opaque brushes, and then you've got your contrast brushes, and they do not mix. They are as different and they are unmixable as the who are the two different the jet from the, I'm thinking West Side Story. There's the Jets and the Sharks, I think, right? All right, they're as unmixable as the Jets and the Sharks. Whew, there's a dated reference for you. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm going to try to get to focus, but as a brush starts to come towards the end of its life, see how we've got that one little hair that has just it's just kind of off there on its own. It's like almost like a cowlick there, and you'll see more and more of that as the brushes get older. So the question is, you know, and it's a problem because you're painting here, and this one little guy is decided he's going to paint way over there, and so it ruins your ability to control where the paint goes. What I do actually is when I get that little bristle there, I'll just take my my snippers, and I'll just snip that little guy off and then keep going. So that's how I deal with these. I'm gonna put it on the phone for a second. You're gonna get a couple seconds of black while I snip this off. There we go. And we're back. And so now I've snipped it off, and we keep going. And I have some brushes where I've snipped off so many that the brush is actually starting to get smaller. But that is a way to extend the life of your brushes. Okay, so we got the base colors on, and now we're going to let it dry. Contrast paints take a lot longer to dry than normal paints, and so that is something you want to prepare for. So got all the base colors on. I'm going to give it a couple hours to just kind of sit here and chill. And then I can start with the cleanup. Now there are some colors that are areas on the model that are just not good for contrast paints, like these little straps that we put on here. These were just rubber bands that we wrapped around. They are raised up, but they're very shallow. And so if we were to put contrast paint on them, it would just bleed and drip and drizzle everywhere. So that's why I haven't painted them yet, is because these are a detail that really you want a traditional paint for these, because the contrast paint will just go everywhere and it won't work. I find that having two metal colors is usually ideal. You want like your basic metal, silver, and then some sort of gold or copper, and you just having those two different kinds of metal really works for orcs. For other armies, you may not want to do that, you know, like ultramarines and stuff. You know, it's not going to look great if their equipment looks like it's made of all these different various materials. But with orcs, you know, it really adds to the cobbled up nature, and also just creates a lot of visual interest. And it's just a really good and simple way to do it. So that's kind of how I approach it, is I'll go for like two metal colors, and then I'll dry brush both of them with the Necron compound to give us some nice edges. Another thing that really helps with orcs is going asymmetrical. Take one barrel and then paint it silver, and then take the other barrel and paint it copper. It's going to make it look like these are, you know, two different things that were kind of duct taped together. And it's a very simple and easy way to kind of just make it look more roughshod. In the past, I had tried doing like multiple metallics, like 5 different kinds of silver and copper and bronze and tin and just all these different shades. But what I found was once I had inked everything and once I had highlighted and dry brushed it, they really kind of all started bleeding together, and all of that extra work really wasn't accomplishing anything. And so that's why I kind of settled on just a kind of a silver and a copper, because they're different enough in tone that they survive the shading and highlighting process and look different at the end. But yeah, just going asymmetrical like this, it doesn't take a long time to do, but it really makes things look orky. So I need some more basing material, so I'm out walking around, looking in gutters and stuff, and oh, look at that, free basing material. It's just right there. Oh, look, there's some more. Yay. Remember to always wash your gutter rocks before you use them, because, you know, for orcs, it's very important that their basing material be nice and clean. You don't want to offend Gork and Mork by using dirty rocks on the bases. So when things really start coming together, this is when I like to glue the rocks onto the bases because, and you notice I didn't glue the rocks on before I primed it, because that allows me to just leave the natural grain of the stone, and so that I don't have to paint them. And so it's kind of like the opposite of the wood. I prime and paint the wood because there's no real way to not prime it. But with the basing, it's a lot easier. Just leave the basing on until you're getting close to being done. So right now we've done the armor on this side. This side still needs to be done, but yeah, it's coming along well. And I need a little break, so I'm gonna glue the rocks on here because you do have to wait for it to dry. And that'll give me a chance to go have some lunch. All right, we got all the basic colors blocked on. Now we do the fun part, which is we're gonna do a very generous coating of a thinned down rattling grime. This is where all of those things we did to add texture and visual interest are really gonna come out, and it'll start looking just filthy and hodgepodge and everything orky that you want. I'm using rattling grime. To be honest, I don't like rattling grime that much. I think Agrax Earthshade is way better, because Agrax Earthshade does a much better job of going on without just ruining the base colors. But I have like 2 bottles of rattling grime that someone gave to me, so I'm like, well, I'm just gonna thin them down as much as I can with, you know, like contrast medium and stuff like that, and I'll put them on a little thinner than normal, and just use them up. And that's how I'm going about this. Now you can see the difference between the reds from the original the ball red contrast that I started with, and then the red that I used to clean things up. In fact, you can see there, like, there's that red there and that red there. And using different colors to clean up is normally a no-no. But with orcs, it's totally fine, because it just makes it look like, you know, the Grots weren't using the same bucket of paint. And but like if you were going to be doing like Gray Knights, or let's say like Custodes or something like that, you probably wouldn't, you know, a military parade kind of formation, you probably wouldn't want to do that. You'd want to use the same color for cleanup as you do your base color. But for orcs, it actually makes it look even better. It just makes it look like, oh my gosh, none of this matches. None of this fits together. None of this is cohesive. It's all Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, which is exactly what we're going for. So, Wild Rider Red. That's the red I used for cleanup. I couldn't remember the name. And you can see here. Now this one I'm gonna leave for a few hours to set once the whole model is covered. And then what we'll do is we'll go in and do the dry brush, which is one of my favorite parts. A few hours later. All right, I painted the base rim black, and you can see that as the rattling grime dries, it's really, really done a great job of darkening everything, and you can see how it's settled in all of the texture that we put onto it. And honestly, for a lot of people, especially if you're doing like a grim dark kind of paint scheme, this might be as far as you want to go. You can just stop right here and call it done. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to add a couple more layers of color to kind of brighten it up. I'm going to do a dry brush, and then I'm also going to do some final touch up with the colors. But I just wanted to kind of pause here and just say that for a lot of people and a lot of paint schemes, this is as far as you need to go. Okay, so we can see here that the I used an Agrex Earth Shade on the flames so that they wouldn't be quite as powerfully shaded as the rest of the tank. And now what we're going to do is we're going to be very carefully taking some yellow and highlighting the flames. What we want is just enough highlight that it kind of blends everything together and gives us a good feel for the shapes, because we don't want the shapes to be lost, and we don't want this will kind of blend all the colors together. We're just doing a very slow and methodical dry brush. You want to be careful because you can always put more paint on, but you can't take it off once it's on there. All right, so we can see here now that the dry brushing the yellow on is complete, the flames look really, really good. We've got all that texture in there, and you can see how, whereas before there was clear, distinct lines between the yellow, the orange, the red, the dark red mixed with black, and the pure black, that washing and dry brushing has done a really good job of kind of naturally blending things together. And because of the way that the droplets were made, you kind of have this outer area which caught a lot of the yellow dry brushing, but an inner area that didn't catch as much of it. So I'm really, really happy with the way this turned out. For some hot glue, that looks pretty darn good, I'd say. Okay, so we've given it a nice dry brush on the wood areas with Tyrant Skull, and we gave a dry brush on the metal areas with Necron Compound. And you can see it did a lot to just kind of brighten the edges up, but not necessarily get rid of all the darkness. I wasn't liking the way the bands were looking, so I just went and gave them another coat just so that they would stand out, and that contrast between, you know, the dirty and the clean kind of creates a little visual interest there. So our final step, besides putting on the sand, is going to be, we're going to go through these green armor areas, and we're going to paint just just the middle areas, because what we don't want to do, we don't want to get rid of all these lovely shadows that we've put on. We don't want to get rid of all these lovely edges with the metal showing. What we do want to do is kind of here in the middle, just reintroduce enough of the green so that it kind of transitions into that pure color. So in a way, we're using the green as its own highlight rather than a lighter green, because the whole panel has been darkened by the rattling grime, and so then we're just introducing it back in. So then once you've put the green just in the center of the panels, then it looks like this, and that is kind of our orky look that we've been doing with the shiny edges, the true color only a little bit in the center of the panels, and you know, when you take a step back, it looks really good. So now we just got to do that over the whole thing, put on the sand, and then we're done. All right, guys, here is the finished product. This Grot airship is all done, and what a joy this was to build and paint. A true trash hammer build. Oh, I love this so much. It looks so orky. The red on the bladder, the dirigible blimp part turned out so good, and it really looks just cobbled together layers of leather. My original plan was to put like some little stitch marks stuff, but in the end, I really liked it the way it was. So I'm like, I'll just leave it, because sometimes you can make things worse by adding too much on. I love the ropes, the hanging ropes from the paper clips look great. You know, you look at this and you don't see the aspirin bottle and the milk lid caps, and that's the part that makes me really happy, is you just see this amazing orc vehicle. I've been walking around having a lot of fun with it.